better than agreement. I'm not looking for uniformity. I want to know, is there anybody else in the server that thinks that it might possibly be the case that there are superior and inferior civilizations, that maybe the Cherokee were better than the Pueblo, that maybe the Apache were better than the Comanche, that maybe Native Americans were worse than the Aztecs, that
I will concede that there are different amenities which are available in first world countries as opposed to third world countries, like the smartphone and internet and things of that nature, plumbing. Yes, it's possible that you would benefit from these amenities, but you must remember that people are not naturally exposed to these things, right? And so it's not that these civilizations are better; it's that they have a different quality of life than the people that live in a less developed neighborhood. You must remember that people that live in a less developed nations such as Africa are experiencing a different way of life.
You just made a statement. I think that I want to understand it. You just said that some civilizations have a better quality of life because they have a better quality of life or something like
so,
that?
Because think about the sociological aspect where people become hyper-monogamous because of the available food and the available socialization, which is only possible in first world nations. Think about all of the infidelity that happens with females in first world nations as opposed to in African nations.
That happens in first world nations as opposed to...
Can you not imagine that people would be more hyper-monogamous in places where Tinder exists as opposed to a single tribe where everybody knows each other and they would be more willing to follow a tradition of monogamy?
I'm sure you haven't studied Haiti. I'm sure you haven't studied most African countries where polygamy is the standard.
It depends on who you're talking about. The different groups that exist within Africa have different cultural traditions. When you think about it, the West has a single cultural ideal, which is that monogamy is what you would call the paramount. Whereas in Africa there are a number of different cultures which exhibit different standards. But in America they can't even hold to a single standard because there's so much psychological warfare occurring on the internet and all of the technology that they have in their pockets that it honestly confuses the average person. There is no one way to live in the Western Hemisphere.
That's supposed to be the beauty, right? It's supposed to be uniform. It's one of the reasons why communism failed. It's one of the reasons why...
I think that we're not supposed to be uniform, but whenever you have a culture filled with a ton of different individuals, it eventually breaks down because the one zeitgeist will overtake the rest of them. If you don't have one uniform, then a bunch of different ideas compete within a single sphere. And eventually one has to come out on top. You can't realize that.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Like, the spirit of the age is what zeitgeist.
Don't you understand that ideologies will eventually fight each other and then one will come out on top? One will be the most populist.
Well, let me take that and offer this, that one of the reasons why we can't have a discussion about superior or inferior civilizations is because that is so politically incorrect that there is no dialogue that is honestly...
It's incorrect because it's, to be quite frank, a stupid question.
Realistically, if we're talking about an objective superior civilization, you would have to be calling upon a higher being, such as God, which is actually more rational than saying that subjectively one is better than the other. You would have to actually call upon a higher power to determine which one is better.
We just talked about several metrics. So many objective
metrics, yes, but which is the right one? Which holds more weight? Are any of them wrong?
I didn't make them up. Look at the United Nations. Look at UNESCO. Go on any of
the United Nations is made by beings to come across a superior metric. You're saying that I'm going to look to a bunch of different cronies to figure out which one is the best metric. Meanwhile, there is only one God, and there is only one system for measuring morality.
You know that doesn't fly at the UN, right? You know that the UN...
I don't care what the UN thinks because they're a bunch of atheist
Satanists. Of what is or isn't factual. That is a very genuine question. Why is the UN's metric better than anyone else's?
What I had to say. I mean, there's
all I'm saying is the UN provides metrics by which the goodness of a nation could be measured.
You're trying to say that human beings are most fit to determine what is an objective truth whenever there is only one objective truth. You're saying that the human beings should define what is a good metric for a comparison whenever God is the only determining factor.
Know about multinational corporations? Know about multinational entities like the World Bank and the IMF? I mean,
what do I care about these multinational
Who says they
corporations
are
when I
the
see
ones
them
who
as
get to
invalid?
choose?
okay, so well, you can
Genuinely,
discard me as
if you
invalid
had-
too and live in your life with a bubble and never have to encounter a challenging idea. Like maybe there are inferior civilizations.
Okay, so you're going for the echo chamber angle. I remember that one from when I
Being
considered
real,
myself
I have been
centrist
exposed to
in
a
big
number
quotes.
of different ideas, including yours before, and I recognize that there is only one standard by which to live, which is the Christian God. If we're being completely honest, he is the only arbiter of truth, the only arbiter of good. And you're trying to tell me that there is some kind of good to be derived from the UN standards, even though they are a complete group of Satanists. I'm bringing it up because you're trying to say that there is only one objective measure by which to measure a civilization, which is not true. You're trying to say that civilization can be measured by objectivity, but it's not possible without a higher power because human beings are imperfect by nature and they differ in a number of different ways.
You honestly have never, you've never sat down and taken a conservative. You've never actually had a conversation.
I mean, he is kind of putting words in your mouth, but he is right. You are saying there is a metric by which the goodness of a nation can be measured.
Sort of meaningful discussion. It's entirely putting words in my mouth. I haven't once talked about.
No, I'm not. You literally said that there is a measure by which you can measure the goodness of a nation.
That's correct. That's correct. I believe that there
It's
are
impossible if you're trying to measure it by human being standards who are imperfect, who are subject to corruption.
That civilization is